In the 13th century, a few hundred knights formed an empire, reaching from western Prussia to the Baltics. The founders of this empire were the Teutonic Knights. But how did Crusaders end up in the Baltics? Well, let me tell you the story of the Teutonic Order. But before we start, I want to ask you for help. If you really want to support this channel, it would be nice if you would leave a sub and a like to help me with the algorithm. Thank you very much. So just like the other military orders, the Teutonic Order was founded in the Holy Land. In 1191, during the siege of Acre, German merchants opened a spital for wounded German soldiers, who were ignored by the Knights Templars and Knights Hospitallers. In 1199, they were given the status of an order. Their symbol was a black cross on a white robe. While the other military orders tried to create sovereign states in the Holy Land, the Teutonic Order increased its influence in the Holy Roman Empire. In the year 1226, they were invited to fight against the Prussians, a pagan tribe living in the region of Prussia. The Prussians had fought off multiple missionary attempts and were constantly raiding the territory of the Holy Roman Empire. 2 Polish attempts to subjugate them had already failed. For their help, the Teutonic Order was promised the control over the conquered territory. And this sounds like a generous deal, but you have to consider that the medieval Prussia was basically a wasteland, a region so isolated that not even the Christian belief had reached it. With the help of the Teutonic Knights, the Crusade against the Prussians ended after a few years. I mean, this was not really a fair fight. The Prussians couldn't do anything against the heavily armored and highly skilled knights. Teutonic Knights were not only skilled and trained warriors, but also very wealthy. This meant that they had access to the best weapons, armors, and horses available in Europe. The Prussians also had horses, but those were rather small and not suited to carry warriors. Remember that at the beginning of the 13th century, knights were still the unchallenged alpha predators on the medieval battlefield. Nothing could stop them, and especially not light infantry consisting of farmers. Also, the Teutonic Knights were not really seeking for land battles. They hit the Prussians where it really hurt. They attacked their towns and villages. I mean, just imagine, you're a peasant and suddenly medieval tanks appear, destroy your village and kill every man old enough to carry a weapon. Facing this hopeless situation, the Prussians had no other chance than asking for peace. After a few years, the Teutonic Knights had subjugated the Prussians. The Prussians were later assimilated and forced to accept the Christian faith. In the year 1236, the Teutonic Knights subjugated the Livonian Brothers of the Sword, who were fighting against pagans in the Baltics. The Livonian Brothers of the Sword were formed at the beginning of the 12th century and operated from Riga. However, following multiple defeats, they were close to a total destruction. They could only survive through the help of the Teutonic Knights. The Teutonic Order turned them into a sub-branch of their order. From that moment on, the Teutonic Order controlled a large empire in northern Europe, reaching from western Prussia to the Baltics. But there was one problem. How should you keep this territory, especially if you are hated and you only have access to a handful of knights? At the beginning of this Teutonic state, there was a lot of unrest, especially as the Order was still sending most of their knights into the Holy Land. In the next 30 years, 2 major uprisings of the Prussians occurred. Only with the help of a Polish army in the 1240s and a Bohemian army in the 1250s, the Teutonic Order was able to re-establish its territories. However, the situation became much better after the fall of Acre in 1291, so the fall of the last major stronghold of the Crusaders in the Holy Land, because from that moment on, the Teutonic Order really focused on Prussia and the Baltics. They had also seen what happened to the Knights Templars in Paris, and so they were really focused on creating their own territory. To ensure control, they basically did two things. The first one was the construction of massive castles, and I mean massive. Till today, the Marienburg, built in 1274, is the biggest castle ever built. Other notable castles are the one of Königsberg, Brüssel, Riga and Reden. Those castles really were impregnable with the resources of the pagan tribes. The Teutonic Knights would spend most of their time in these castles. However, if there was a sign of unrest, they would leave their castles to wreak havoc on the rebels. The men would be killed, and the women and the children would be abducted. Similar things were also done in Lithuania, but mostly to keep them weak. Over 40 of these small crusades were carried out by Teutonic Knights. However, it would be wrong to say that the Teutonic Knights were only brutal occupiers. I mean, you can say what you want, but they really stabilized the region and built infrastructure. With them, they also brought an efficient administration system to govern the region. This allowed them to build up a large trading network, and this trading network brought an enormous amount of wealth into the region. As you know, the Teutonic state perished. In the Battle of Tannenberg in 1410, the Teutonic Order was defeated by a Polish-Lithuanian army, and a large number of their knights were killed. They were able to achieve one last big victory in the Battle of Konitz in 1454, but their time was over. 10 years later, their territory was separated between Prussia and Poland. The main reason for their downfall can be found all over history. A state cannot survive through violence. I really hope you liked this video. If you want, you can see my last one. It is about Hannibal's plans after his defeat at Zama. As always, stay healthy, see you next time, and bye.